Life podcast. I'm Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's holiday season. I love it. My Longhorns are advancing to the second round of the college football playoff.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Can't complain. Mavs are playing well. It's a good time.
It is a good time. You know, my SMU Mustangs. They had a great season. Great season.
Great season. That was a little rough, though, man.
I know. So why are you smiling?
That was a beatdown.
Why are you smiling about it, though?
I'm trying to be nice about it.
I see. I see you smiling hard, though. You want to laugh.
Maybe Alabama should have gotten in after all. Who knows?
Stop
Who knows?
Stop it. All those horrible losses that they had. Okay, so Shahnavaz, this episode, last week, we only had one game to talk about. This week, we have two. The good thing is the Mavs are getting rest in between games. We really have just the Clippers 2-game series, and we'll dive in a little bit about Quentin Grimes and Klay Thompson, how they're performing. They're really doing really well, but we'll talk into it in more details. So Shahnavaz, the 2-game series, the Mavericks, the first game, they were out and Kyrie, and things were just not happening that game. The first half was close, but then the Clippers just turned it on. They won 118-95, and then Kyrie comes back, and he gives them, even though he had an off shooting night, he was playing defense. He was getting the team riled up, and just playing really good. They won 113-97, so different story from the first game. But what was your thoughts on just the 2-game series as a whole and how the Mavericks split it 1-1?
Look, I think the first game, the fact that the Mavs even kept it close without having Luka and Kyrie was excellent. I mean, you mentioned this before the pod, kind of offline, that this is a team that's made up fully of essentially role players outside of Luka and Kyrie. I mean, you don't really have that third guy. I mean, any night could be, you could have a different third guy every single night, in terms of who's gonna take on that additional scoring load. But when you're missing your two best players, it goes for any team in the NBA. It's really hard to win. You look at what's happening in Philly, when Embiid or Maxey or Paul George, you get two of those guys out, they're not the same team. You can make the same case for a bunch of teams across the NBA. So I don't put too much stock into a game where your two superstars are out. You miss it. The Mavs kept it close to the best of their ability, but ultimately the Clippers just were the better team that night. And you look at guys like Norman Powell who went off. Zubac, who the Mavs feels like every year have trouble defending Zubac and his physicality inside, and even James Harden having a good game that night. But I will say, look, there was still 5 players in double figures, which we've seen time and time again with this Mavs team, that you're having 5, 6, even the second game against the Clippers, 8 players in double figures last night. I mean, the depth of this team is just ridiculous, and it's such a welcome sight to see. And you saw, even without Luka, you have one superstar on the floor with Kyrie last night, and the Mavericks just completely took out the Clippers. I mean, it wasn't, the score, I think made it closer than it was. The Mavericks pulled away pretty much in the third quarter, and the Clippers had a little mini run there. But, you talk about the role players. So when you have that one superstar on the team, the role players can do their jobs, right? Nobody's having to take on that scoring load. They know what they're doing. Yeah. They know what their responsibility is, and that showed last night in the win against the Clippers.
Yeah, I agree. I think with this team, like you said, they are, it's 2 stars surrounded by quality role players. Like they could have bigger roles on other teams or, bottom feeder teams, but they really hone in on their role with the Mavericks. Just like PJ Washington, for instance. I mean, he was more of a scorer with the Hornets. Gafford, he had bigger role with the Wizards, stuff like that. When they come to this team, they really hone in on the unselfishness of stats. They just do what it takes to win the games. And that's the beauty of a top team in the league, when you have role players who know their role and become stars in their role. So when you say role players on this team, it's actually a compliment, because they all, surround Kyrie and Luka very well. It's, it's kind of like they're all in sync with each other. So like you said, you have to have at least one of those guys playing, because when you don't, it's just a scramble on, who's really getting their shots up, because they all find their looks with Kyrie or with Luka, but without them, they're all just going back and forth like, all
Yeah.
right, it's my turn to, try to get something. So I agree with you. I think that first game, it's just you just take the L and you move on. They were better that night and they made it close, but eventually the Clippers turned it on, like you said, Norman Powell and Zubac and Harden. But that second game was really good to see because 8 players scored in double figures. That's the second time this season. And I think they're like 13-0 when at least six players score in double figures. And that shows you the beauty of not only when you have one star out, but when when both stars are playing, you still have role players still shining in their role. It's not just 3 guys scoring in double figures with Kyrie and Luka being the 30 plus nights. It's a collective group even when you have your stars.
And that's the key. Is I look back to the Memphis game when Luka had 37, and there were still 6 players in double figures.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not just Luka and Kyrie going off. It's they're getting their buckets, but they're doing it at a much better pace, if in terms of efficiency, because they're getting open looks. Because now you can't leave these role players open because Quentin Grimes is hitting shots, PJ's hitting shots, Dinwiddie has recovered so well since that Miami game, the overtime game against Miami a couple of weeks ago. So now it's Luka and Kyrie are getting efficient looks, they're getting open looks now, and they're making the right plays to the role play, and the role players are knocking down shots. We've said it for so many years that if the role players could just hit their shots, the Mavericks would have had a better record. The Mavericks would have been a top 4 seed, and now you're seeing the benefits of having these guys that are able to score off ball, getting passes from Luka and Kyrie, and are able to do their jobs to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, and also Najee.
Yeah.
There's so many good role players, and we haven't even mentioned Dante hasn't even played a game yet, and he was one of the most important role players on this team. That month of December, he was awesome. he was the third best player on this team.
He carried the team when Kyrie was out.
Yes, he did, and that's the beauty of the depth on this team, and that also, when you think about this roster, they're really too deep at every position, and that's like, I'm not saying just like, oh, they have a guy who can play. They have a guy who can start or has started games. Because when you look at Gafford, you look at Najee, you look at Grimes, you look at Dinwiddie. They've all started games, and they're plug and play players. You really have, when you get really into it, you really have 8 starters with Grimes, Marshall, and Gafford, but you can throw Dinwiddie in there because he's a back and forth plug and play. So they have like 9 starters. If they could just get a backup power forward, this team is
unstoppable.
Set. Yeah. It is set for years because yes, we talked about Omax. We talked about what he's done, but Maxey, it's taken some time because he's either hurt or, he's just finding his rhythm. So you can't really judge on what he's doing on the court when he gets back from injury, but you always come to mind if they just had a backup 4, or if maybe it's Omax, but if they just had a complete rotation of 10 players, that team is lethal, because then you have Hardy as a third guy, you have Exum as a third guy.
Yep.
But who knows what trades? But I'm just saying they're too deep. If they could find just a backup power forward.
Yeah, and Nico's looking. Nico, you got to have full faith in what he's done the last few years, and there's no doubt in my mind he's surveying the landscape, trying to figure out what's the one missing piece that this team has, and everyone knows I think it's a backup for it. And Maxey, look, offensively he's been awful. Let's not sugarcoat it, but games like last night where you've got to have that physicality against Zubac. He played meaningful minutes. Even though he only scored 1 point. You've got to have a guy like that. So if the Mavericks can just find somebody on the trade market, who kind of fits that role, to your point, this team is going to be absolutely lethal and a team that nobody's going to want to play come playoff time.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be. I'm not even talking about what the rumors are online of, what fans, who they want. Like, I'm not even talking like Cam Johnson. I'm not talking Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm not talking about those type of guys, because, you're going to have to give up something to get those guys. I'm talking about just, just a guy who could play every day, because that's That's what it is. Because with Maxi, he's not a stat sheet guy. You don't look at the stats. You look at the eye test with Maxi, like you just said. He played well last night against Zubats and just giving the team energy. But my thing with Maxi is it's not about scoring. I don't need a backup four to score 10 points. They got enough scores on the team.
Yeah,
We just talked about it. It's about availability.
that
Because
yeah,
that's the thing with Maxi is he hasn't played a lot the last 3-4 years, and you want someone. And I'm not saying rule out Omax because he has performed really well. If he had a set role every game, I think by the end of the season he would be really good as a backup. But I think that since they are contending or they're in the top 5, top 6 teams in the league right now, you want to do the best you can to capitalize on that because you don't know in playoffs what if Maxi's out. Like
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like even if you have to, and I'm not talking Cam or Dorian, like all these mock trades are saying by fans or media just trying to push things. It's more like go find a Larry Nance who's not even playing a game with the Hawks. He's just sitting there.
Yeah,
Those type of players that are not even playing, but if they were on the Mavericks, they will be
they
playing
get
every
time.
night.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so Shahnavaz, let's go into some of these players who are really balling out lately. Let's start with Quentin Grimes.
Oof.
Quentin Grimes, my goodness. I mean, talk about a guy who really started his NBA career off through the gates because he was starting with the Knicks, especially his second year. He was doing great on a great team too. They had 40 plus wins. I mean, not a great team, but a good team. He was starting as a young player. And then, that third year was kind of rough. He gets out of the starting lineup and, injuries, traded to Pistons. Who knows his role there? Then he gets healthy. He's free agent. He signs with the Mavericks. And he starts off slow. He sat some games and he was everything the Mavs were looking for, but he sat some games and him and Kid were trying to figure it out. And my goodness, they have figured it out. After that DNP with the Nuggets game,
Yep.
he has been soaring through his role, and he is very good. You kind of regret they didn't get an extension because his price is going up every single game, but he's a restricted, and they have the second richest owners in the league, so you can match whatever. But still, I mean, he is soaring right now. What's your thoughts on Quentin Grimes in the last 10 games? I mean, he's really playing well.
Sometimes those DNPs are good. I mean, you
Mm,
got it, whether it's, we question it, right? We question, Jason Kidd all the time, and you see it online on social media and everything. But look, that DNP was the best thing for Quentin Grimes when you
yeah.
look back on it. Whether it was a confidence boost, whether it was, a message sent to him. I mean, whatever, it clearly got through. It clearly got through to him, and you need guys like that when Luka and Kyrie are out. And we've seen Quentin Grimes make starts. You mentioned it earlier that you can plug and play him in the starting lineup. He can come off the bench like he did last night against the Clippers and put up 17 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, hyper efficient scoring. I mean, it's the confidence that he has now that he's coming in and playing his role. I mean, he shot 87.5% last night. He was 7 of 8 from the field,
Mm,
3 of 4 from three. I mean, that's unbelievable. If you look back outside of a couple games, the Toronto game and the OKC game where he had a combined 4 points. I mean, he's averaging 15 in his last 10 games. 15
wow.
points on 53% shooting and 46% from three. So he's been hyper efficient. He knows his role, and the confidence is there. It's what was lacking from Josh Green. It was
Yeah.
the trust that you wish you had this kind of trust in Tim Hardaway Jr. And the Mavericks, felt like, okay, we've got to, Tim Hardaway Jr. was not efficient. We saw some of those games where it was 2 of 10, 2 of 15 from the field. And Quentin Grimes, if he's not hitting his threes, he's being ultra aggressive, driving the lane. He's making the right passes. And defensively, he's been fantastic. We know Quentin Grimes' calling card
Hmm.
has always been his defense, his
Yep.
on-ball defense, but he's been outstanding. And so now you've got guys off the bench for the Mavericks when Luka and Kyrie both are healthy, where you're not lacking in scoring or defense when you bring a guy like Grimes off the bench. And if one of those guys is missing time, you feel confident plugging him in the starting lineup and not missing a beat because he knows what shots to take. He knows when to drive inside. He knows when the shot's not falling from outside. He knows when to get get the ball to open guys. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's a veteran play from a young player, which is amazing to see. And he's a phenomenal pickup for this team, and hats off to Nico for going out and making that trade to dump Tim Hardaway Jr. to get him from Detroit, because I don't know if this team would be where they are without Quentin Grimes.
I like you that you just said that because it's right. It's true. And, it's one thing that outside of what you just said that I really like about Quentin Grimes is although he's still young, he's still 24, so you can build around his age with this core. Like obviously you got Klay, you got Kyrie, you got the older guys, but the young core, the Lively, the Washington, the Luca, you can add his name in that group because he's still young. He still has so much more to grow, especially like ball handling. You see splashes of it, but like you can see him fitting along this group, and I like that. But also his aggressiveness. And I'm not just talking about just scoring. I'm talking about shooting. It's not just the way he shoots. It's okay, I'm gonna take the shot because
Yeah.
I'm feeling good. And that's what I like because like you just mentioned Josh Green, like I know we go back to it because that is the comparison. He did take Josh Green's role, the plug and play 3-and-D guy that makes the hustle plays. But the thing with Grimes is he's always aggressive. When he's feeling it, he's going to shoot it no matter if Luka and Kyrie's on the floor.
Yep.
He's still going to take that shot. And that's what I like because even though Josh Green, he was on and off, no matter if Kyrie and Luka were on the floor, he still was going to defer. And I like Grimes because as a spectator, you want to see guys like you just mentioned confidence. You want to see guys who not just say that they feel confident, but they show it.
Yep.
Even when the stars are on the court, because then that just gives you a preview. It gives you a glimpse of the future. When you have the playoffs, and if Kyrie's off one night or if Luka is off one night, you got guys who are not afraid of the moment. You got guys who can take those shots on the brightest stage. So that's what gives me hope with Grimes just throughout the totality of the season. And you know what? What's an interesting fact about Grimes in December? I know it's only been 8 games for him in December, but he has shooting splits of 50-40-90. 50-40-90.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy because he's still trajecting up. October 5 games, 3 points. November 13 games, 9.6 points. December 8 games, 12.4 points. He's still trending up. And I asked him too. I said, just what part of your game has grown the most since the beginning of the season to get this trust from the teammates and the coaching staff? Because remember, at the beginning of the season, he wasn't playing that much. He was playing 11 minutes a game in October, 22 minutes a game in November, 23 and a half games in December. And he said being comfortable in the schemes, it takes time.
Yep.
You have to know when to take shots, how the defensive is going. It's a totally different scheme. And then also building good habits in practice. And I know Iverson, he's like, practice. We talk about practice.
Practice?
But it's really true. Like he's building good habits in practice where the coaches and his teammates are seeing that. And when it comes to games, he is showing it.
Yeah, and before the season started, the sky is falling in October and November. What do I always say, Landon? Wait till December.
Wait till December. Yeah.
Give it time. You're talking about throwing in 3 new guys in the rotation in Dinwiddie, Najee, and Quentin Grimes. It's going to take time for the team. There's a difference, obviously, between practice and full games, and you've got to get that comfortability, that that kind of understanding of how your teammates play. Where do they like the ball? Where do what are their hot zones? Where are they cold? Luka and Kyrie can dissect opponents all the time and figure out, okay, Quentin Grimes likes the shots on the wing. PJ likes the threes in the corner. So let the offense rotate. Let them get there. Pass the ball. We've seen it time and time again. Now, as this team gets more comfortable playing with each other, look at what they're doing to opponents. 8 players in double figures landed last night. That's unbelievable. even with Luka putting up 37 against Memphis, 6 players in double figures. This is not just a one-man show anymore or a two-man show like
Yeah.
we saw last year. Everybody is getting involved, and the fact that you can have a different player every night be your third option, what are you supposed to do as a defense? Because
Yeah.
any one of these guys can get hot. And it's right now it's Quentin Grimes. It's been Spencer Dinwiddie a few games. It's been Jaden Hardy even a couple games, right? The game against Atlanta and Portland. So anybody can get hot, and it's awesome to watch. I mean, it's so much fun.
It is. Okay, Shahnavaz, last word. Klay Thompson. My goodness.
Oh boy.
If you could use one word to describe his December, what word would it be?
Vintage.
Vintage.
Vintage Klay Thompson.
I like it because when you look at his stats in December, 7 games, he's shooting 52.4% from the floor, 45.3 beyond the arc, and he has 3 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 1.4 steals.
Yeah.
He's really turned it on. What's your thoughts on him? And I know you said vintage, but what makes you come to that word when you see Klay Thompson?
Just the efficiency. I mean, we
Yeah.
know Clay's not lacking for confidence, right? Clay's going to take those shots, but you look at just his. I mean, you look at the last 5 games that he's played in. I mean, only even when he was shooting poorly against the Clippers in the loss, he only shot 22% from 3, but he still finished with 22 points, and he
Yeah.
shot 52% from the field, which that means all of his buckets inside the 3-point arc were going in.
Yeah.
His last 5 games, he's averaging 21 and 4 rebounds a game. Every game, he scored over 16 points.
Mhm.
So you're seeing the perfect version of Klay Thompson that you wanted on this team. This is the guy that the Mavs signed. He was struggling earlier in the year, and whether that was the injury, whether that was just trying to get into the flow of the offense. We've seen him have some poor shooting nights, but man, since he's come back from that injury, he has just been on fire. And we know, again, like I said, he doesn't lack confidence, but he's stepping into his shots. He's knocking him down. Even when he's shooting poorly from 3, what is he doing? He's getting into the paint. He's getting more efficient looks. He's
Yeah.
not just firing up, 10 threes a game. He's a veteran player. He's a champion. He understands there's other ways to score. There's other ways to make a difference in the basketball game outside of knocking down threes, even though that's his calling card, right? His steal numbers are up. His defense has gotten a lot better as the season's gone on. You can finally see him getting into a rhythm of playing with this team and understand. And it goes back to what we said with Quentin Grimes.
Mhm.
It's getting into the flow of the offense, understanding the scheme, understanding the offensive and defensive assignments, and you're starting to see all of that click with Klay Thompson, and it's got to be scary for the rest of the league if his December is any indication of what's to come.
Yeah, and he's notoriously known for having slow starts. So I think it's just more emphasized when he's on a new team. So everyone panics. But even when he was having bad numbers, shooting the ball, because that's his calling card. He is what 8? He's like a few threes away from being top 5 in threes all time, and he's still 34, so he still has some years left of shooting threes. So, I think you're starting to see why they signed him. And I like that you pointed out not just shooting, because that's what gets lost with Klay Thompson, because he has a slow start, but that's shooting the ball.
Yep.
He has played great defense, and it's really the eye test because he has really held his own. And I'm not saying he's the old Klay because that was elite defense, but he is being a good defender and he's also playing great team defense. So that's really what stands out to me the most. And another thing that you mentioned, driving. He's been really good at driving. I haven't seen that much of that in Golden State. Like he's driving the ball, he's throwing it to Lively or throwing it to Gafford, and I think that just makes the team more dynamic. And this team is really blossoming in December, but it just makes me, I guess, excited to see where this team is at when they're healthy. We only had like 2 games outside of Exum, obviously the whole season, but like outside of Exum, I think we only had like 2 games where the Mavericks fully suited everybody outside of Exum. And that's
Yeah.
what's crazy to think about, because you just see the beauty of just Najee and PJ playing together, and now you're seeing the beauty of just everyone coming back. So when Luka comes back, it's gonna, and Hardy as well. You mentioned Hardy. When Kid has all the tools in the toolbox, it could get scary. It could get scary.
And it's such a nice. It feels like it's been such a long time, but it feels so comfortable now when you read the injury report and you see, okay, Luka's out. There's no fear anymore, right?
Yeah,
There's no fear of, oh man, what are the Mavs going to do tonight? Like, is this a lot? No, because it's been proven that this team can overcome missing Luka or Kyrie.
yeah,
Having both of them off the floor is a different story, right? But
yeah,
that's for any team.
yeah.
I feel like anytime you're missing your two best players, it's a struggle. But when you're missing one of your two best players, there's no fear anymore that, oh, the
No.
Mavericks are going to struggle, because you've got, look at all the ammunition that this team has.
Yeah, and the Mavericks are 6-2 without Luka this season. They're 4-8 without Luka last season, and that's because Kyrie was just scoring a bunch of points just to get him, to just afloat above water. But
Yep.
now you don't even have to have a 30, 40-point game from Kyrie, even when Luka's out. You just have to have the whole team. As long as like you said, as long as one star is playing, they will be fine. They will make it competitive. But when you have both stars playing with the roster that they have, things are going to get really good, and you're starting to see it with the Mavericks.
Yeah. And one last thing, Landon, I know we didn't mention it, but we've got to call it out. Rick Welts coming in as new CEO for the
Oh
Mavericks.
yeah.
Unbelievable hire. If people don't know who Rick Welts is, he's spent 40 years in the NBA. He was director of PR for the Seattle Supersonics when they were around and won the title back in the late 70s. I think it was 79.
Mm-hmm.
He's the architect of the Dream Team, the marketing campaign behind the Dream Team. He's a creator of NBA All-Star Weekend. And more importantly, he spent time as the Warriors president from 2015 to 2019 during their dynasty run. So he's got a good relationship with Klay. He's known Nico Harrison forever. He was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame in 2018 with Jason Kidd.
Yep.
And so
Amazing
huge,
class.
amazing class with, it was Kidd, it was
Steve
Nash.
Nash. Yeah.
Rick Welts he was mastermind behind the new Chase Center that was built for the Warriors. So this is all signs pointing to a new arena for the Mavericks. We know kind of that's why the Dumont family came in. Part of it was to get the new arena built, which is going to be 10 minutes from my house, which I'm super excited about. But Rick Welts, I mean, dude is a legend in the NBA. He's just an incredible hire by the Dumont family to get him out of retirement and have him come in and replace Sid Marshall, who's been fantastic over the last few years.
Yes.
As she retires. But Rick Welts, huge get for the Mavericks. I mean, this is a complete. You think about where this organization was just a few years ago with Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlo, and the shift that they've made to a new ownership group, GM, coach, and now a new CEO. I mean, this is going to be one of the best organizations run in the NBA. So hats off to the Mavericks for getting Rick Welts.
Yeah, well said. And it's a twofold, because you definitely want to give flowers to Scent. I mean, Scent really,
she was awesome.
She was really awesome, 7 years, and she really carried the culture for the Mavericks from a dark, gloomy place with some of the things going on into one of the best front offices, one of the best organizations to work for. She really transformed the culture around the Mavericks, not just internal, but externally. And then now you're seeing the contention pieces, because now with, like you said, with Welts, who's you already listed, I don't even have to go into Welts' resume, and then you got Nico, and then you got Jason Kidd, and you're starting to see not just them, but you're seeing other pieces in the front office and just the players they're bringing in because they want to come to Dallas. The Mavericks are bringing pieces in, not only financially with the new ownership, but with Welts, with Nico, with Jason. They're bringing in people that players want to play for.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's the biggest thing, because if you look at all three of those guys, players love them.
Yep.
And that's going to be incredible for the Mavericks as they are just opening their window for contention starting last year. All right, so everyone, we appreciate y'all joining in. We hope y'all have a happy holidays, because after this, Christmas comes shortly, and the Mavericks will be playing, but they have the Blazers first. The Blazers are always hit or miss, so you have to take care of business with them. But we just want to wish y'all happy holidays, and y'all see our socials. Make sure y'all follow us in our analysis on the game. And then also, we appreciate y'all subscribing to our YouTube channel. It keeps growing by the month, so we appreciate y'all doing that as well. And thanks for tuning in.